Hello friends, this is Grief speaking, and this week I'm going to be covering Watership Down, originally a novel by Richard Adams. I know Watership Down isn't really a horror, but it does have its horrifying and disturbing moments. The story got a lot of buzz in recent years due to the 1978 film adaptation having a sort of resurgence online, mostly because of its inclusion on people's childhood trauma lists. Because while this is an animated film about cute rabbits, it's full of disturbing images and scenarios, mostly when the rabbits are brutally killed in bloody detail. Now today we're going to be going through the comic adaptation of this story, which has all of the fucked up stuff from the animated film and more. If you like the movie, the book, or have no idea what Watership Down is but keep hearing about it, this video is for you. But this is a long one, so let's just get into it. This is Watership Down Explained. Part 1. The Journey. Chapter 1. The Notice Board. Our story starts with a small rabbit named Fiver and his older brother Hazel. Fiver has pretty good instincts, as you'll soon see, and easily tracks down some cowslip for them to eat. As they enjoy this little treat, two big rabbits show up and tell them to leave the plants for them to eat. These are Hazel-Rah. Basically, they're the strongest rabbits in a warren and help protect it. Hazel says if he ever gets into the Hazel-Rah himself, he'll treat outskirters like them with some decency. As they talk, Fiver is suddenly frozen still, his eyes wide with terror. He has quick images flash through his mind. Some hammers and nails, cigarette butts, and tire tracks. In a wild panic, he says that he has a queer feeling and that something terrible is heading their way. It's coming closer and they can't stop it. He tells his brother to look out at the field, screaming that it's covered in blood. From his perspective, we do see the nearby field is drenched in blood, which is flowing toward them. It's an eerie few panels that honestly send a chill down my spine. Hazel's a little freaked out and tells him it's only the light of the sunset, but Fiver continues, saying that the blood will come to the burrow as well. Finally, Hazel calms his little brother down and they decide to head back regardless. They run back to the burrow, but nearby we see a human sign from a construction company. It looks like they're about to start building a housing development right on top of the warren. Chapter 2. The Chief Rabbit. In his sleep, Fiver has a chilling nightmare. Him and many other rabbits are floating down a large stream atop a board that is made up of bones and wires. It's a pretty hellish sight. Worse than that, Hazel is sinking in the water, being dragged down a dark tunnel, saying a chief rabbit must go alone. He tells this to Hazel the next morning, who shrugs it off at first, but Fiver insists that danger is all around and that they must warn the chief rabbit. So they go to speak with the chief, first requesting this through an Hazel-Rah named Bigwig, a harsh rabbit with dark tufts of hair on his head. He leads them to the chief and Hazel tells him about Fiver's warning. First, he gives his brother some credibility, mentioning how he predicted the Great Flood in the autumn and can sometimes tell where a trap is set. Fiver interrupts, freaking out and demanding all the rabbits abandon the burrow. He eventually falls to the floor squirming as if he's having a seizure or something. The chief clearly thinks he's crazy and sends them away. Chapter 3. Hazel's Decision. Later, Hazel discusses the situation with his friend Blackberry when Bigwig shows up pissed off. Apparently, he got chewed out by the chief and his captain for letting the brothers speak about such nonsense. It looks like he may have lost his position in the Hazel-Rah as a sentry, but Fiver tells him ominously that soon there will be no one standing sentry. Bigwig asks him if he's only making these stories up to feel important or if they're actually true. Fiver sincerely says it's the truth, and surprisingly, Bigwig asks, "Then when do we leave?" Blackberry warns him not to make such a rash decision, but Hazel says that if they believe Fiver is right, they don't really have any other option. So it looks like they're leaving the warren. Before they do, Bigwig knows a few other Hazel-Rah rabbits who are sick of taking orders as well and might join them. Blackberry warns him though, if Captain Holly finds out, he'll tear them all to pieces. Chapter 4. The Departure. In the dead of night, Hazel, Fiver, and another small rabbit named Pipkin leave the burrow and meet up with the others who plan to escape, including Blackberry and a yellow rabbit named Dandelion, as well as Bigwig and two other large Hazel-Rah named Buckthorn and Silver. I know there's a lot of names here right at the top, but don't worry, you'll know who's who soon enough. Just as they all start discussing the plan, Captain Holly shows up and says that they're all under arrest for spreading dissent. Bigwig then interrupts him by tackling the captain to the ground. One of the guards jumps in to defend his captain, but Buckthorn and Silver join the fight, scratching the shit out of him. After they break it up, Hazel points out that the captain and her two guards are outnumbered and tells them to leave or they'll kill them. Damn. So Captain Holly leaves, but not before declaring that they'll get their revenge. Hazel and the others set off. Chapter 5. The Story of the Blessing of Hazel-Rah. The gang of rabbits has been running non-stop through the woods when finally Pipkin begs for them to stop. They find a nearby fern to hide under and take a rest. Hazel remembers that Dandelion is something of a storyteller and asks the rabbit to help take their minds off of their troubles by telling a tale. We get some interesting rabbit lore here as Dandelion tells the tale of Hazel-Rah, who is something of a rabbit folk hero. The story starts with the sun, who the rabbits call Frith, creating the world. This is basically their god. Frith then makes the animals who all live in harmony. Even the foxes and rabbits eat grass together. Among them was the rabbit Hazel-Rah, who had so many young that Frith couldn't even count them. Because of the overpopulation, the grass began growing thin, and Frith told the rabbit that if he can't control his people, then he will. He gave each animal a special gift. To the birds, the gift of song, to the cow, great strength, and to the foxes and weasels, the desire to slay the children of Hazel-Rah. Before Hazel-Rah could receive his gift, a bird screamed overhead, warning him that Frith had given the fox and weasel sharp teeth. Meanwhile, Frith called out to him, and the scared rabbit buried his head in a hole to hide. When Frith found him, ready to give his blessing, the rabbit had only his rump sticking out of the ground. So Frith blessed his bottom instead, giving it a fluffy white tail and the gifts of strength and warning and speed. All the world will now be Hazel-Rah's enemy, which is what his name means, Prince of 1,000 Enemies. But first, they'll have to catch him. Frith tells the prince to be cunning and full of tricks, and his people will never be destroyed. He knew then that Frith was his friend, and all the rabbits look at him as the father of them all. Man, I didn't expect to find such a great mythos in a book about rabbits. Chapter 6. The Crossing. It begins to rain, and the group of rabbits come upon a creek. Fiver says they must cross it. Everyone protests, but he assures them they'll soon be in a high, dry place where they can see and hear all around. A place where men hardly come. While they discuss the possibilities of crossing, Bigwig scouts further downriver to see if there's an easier place to get across. Unfortunately, he doesn't find one, and worse than that, there's a large dog on the loose in the woods. They need to get across now. However, Pipkin has injured his leg somehow and doesn't seem to be up to swimming at the moment. The hot-headed Bigwig says they'll all be dog food and blames Fiver for getting them into this mess. At the same time, Blackberry finds something on the bank, a small piece of wood. He has the idea that Pipkin and Fiver can float across on it. Hazel thinks Blackberry's losing his mind, but Fiver immediately agrees to it and calls Pipkin over. The bigger rabbits, Bigwig and Silver, then push the plank into the water, and sure enough, the scared rabbits float across. The other rabbits follow behind, swimming, and Bigwig pushes Pipkin and Fiver the last couple feet. With everyone safe on the other side, Fiver thanks Blackberry for saving them with his idea. Blackberry says they should remember it, as it may come in handy again one day. Chapter 7. The Crow in the Bean Field. The next morning, after their harrowing experience in the creek, the rabbits all rest in the grass and eat. Hazel is curious about a strange smell and scopes it out to find a large bean field on the other side of the hill. He returns to the others and tells them this would be a good place to rest where they could stay hidden. As the rabbits all move over the hill toward the field, Pipkin is lagging behind on account of his sore paw. Fiver stops to check on him, and soon the others hear them shrieking. Hazel bolts back to see what happened and finds a large crow has pinned Pipkin to the ground and is trying to kill him. Bigwig, seemingly afraid of nothing, rams the crow hard, scaring it away. Pipkin seems fine, other than his injured paw, and they carry on. Chapter 8. The Hard Road. This section starts with an ominous few panels, showing a crow, a beetle, a hunter, and a dog. In the bean field, Hazel has managed to pull a large splinter from Pipkin's paw. Looks like this was what was hurting him. Once they've had a chance to rest, they continue their journey until they come upon a road. A car comes flying by, and Hazel remarks that he's never seen a hrududu move that fast. This is the rabbit's term for tractor, car, or any other motor vehicle. Bigwig tells them that it's the road that allows them to move so fast. He says that there's actually not much to them except at night. At night, they're evil. It's clear Bigwig's encountered a road before, and he even demonstrates that the hrududu take no notice of rabbits. Almost comically, he just stands on the edge of the road as a car whizzes right by him and says, "See, they don't hurt you." Yeah, seems like he's just been lucky for the most part. Well, he proves his point, and the rabbits start crossing the road when they catch a foul stench. On the other side is a road-killed hedgehog, bleeding from the mouth and covered in flies. It's pretty jarring and reminds you that this isn't really a kid's story. The rabbits continue through the night, and some of them are are sick of traveling. Two rabbits, Hawkbit and Acorn, tell Hazel they've had enough running and the constant lack of safety. They think it was stupid to come along. Bigwig is pissed at them and tells them to go on back and get killed by the Oslaw. Hawkbit says he's not their chief, they don't have to listen to him, and this just sets Bigwig off. He brutally starts chomping on Hawkbit's ear. Hazel breaks it up and says there's enough danger without them turning on each other. They're not far now and just need to make it a little longer. Chapter 9. The Stranger in the Field. Well, their hard travels seem to have paid off, as the gang arrives in a beautiful meadow and rest under the shade of a tree. Hazel says this sure feels like a home and asks Fiver if he feels the same way. But Fiver is staring off into space as if contemplating something heavy. The next day, the rain is picked up again and they start making plans to build a warren. Bigwig and the other Oslaw return after scouting the area and believe it to be pretty safe, though there are some man tracks around and a farm a ways off. As they discuss this, Fiver stares wide-eyed and starts frantically stamping his feet. The others come to see what's up and spot a strange rabbit staring at them from a ways off. He's pretty creepy actually, just staring and grinning with those beady eyes. Finally, the rabbit approaches them and he doesn't seem to be an enemy. His name is Cowslip and apparently there is already a burrow here, but he says they're all welcome to join it. Chapter 10. Hospitality. Later, huddled under a tree in the rain, the rabbits discuss joining Cowslip's warren and ultimately decide that it seems safe enough, even though Fiver is against the idea. So Hazel leads them through the meadow where they easily find Cowslip's burrow, and they're surprised that these rabbits don't even hide their holes. They're greeted by a pink rabbit named Strawberry who leads them inside. Hazel asks about meeting the chief rabbit, and strangely, Strawberry tells them that they don't have a chief. Bigwig then wonders about Oslaw and who defends against Allele, a term referring to the predators of rabbits. Strawberry says that the man who comes through keeps them away. He says it's basically a paradise here with plenty of room in the burrow and plentiful food. So the rabbits settle into some burrows and can't believe their luck to find such a wonderful place. However, we see that Fiver is wide-eyed and uneasy once again. He slips out of the warren and Hazel follows after, wondering what's wrong. Before Hazel can find him, Strawberry says that the man has come and for her to grab the rabbits to Silflay. Silflay is another rabbit term meaning to go above ground and eat. When they get up top, they find the man has left a large pile of carrots and lettuce. Hazel and the other rabbits chow down, astonished again that this place is so wonderful. Bigwig notes with this much food, it's no wonder why all of Cowslip's rabbits are so big. Soon Hazel is worried again about Fiver, who's nowhere to be seen. He finally finds him on the roots of a nearby tree and asks what's wrong. Fiver wants no part in this place. He asks the rhetorical question, do you think the man puts food out like that because he has a kind heart? Hazel argues that if the man wanted to shoot them, he would have done it by now. But Fiver insists that something is twisted about this place, but he just can't see it clearly, like it's covered in a mist. Hazel tells him not to torture himself over it and to come back and enjoy their good fortune. Back in the warren, Cowslip formally welcomes Hazel and company and has learned that among them is a good storyteller. Cowslip asks Dandelion if he would tell them a story. So Dandelion suggests he tell the tale of their journey here and the dangers they've faced. But Cowslip dismisses this and asks for another story. Dandelion then suggests the story of Hazel-Rah and the king's lettuce, a story about how he outwits his enemies. But once again, Cowslip seems uninterested, saying they don't tell those quaint old stories here. Hazel and Blackberry are surprised by this. These stories are important, as Hazel-Rah is a trickster and rabbits will always need tricks. Cowslip disagrees, saying that what a rabbit really needs is dignity and the will to accept their fate. At these words, Fiver suddenly freaks the out and bolts. One of Cowslip's rabbits stops him and tries to calm him down, but Fiver bites the rabbit's shoulder, taking a chunk out before running away. Hazel apologizes and he and Bigwig speed off to try and talk some sense into Fiver. Chapter 11. The Shining Wire. They catch up to Fiver outside, and the small rabbit declares he's leaving to the hills if he can get there. Bigwig says he'll die traveling alone, and Fiver ominously says that Bigwig is closer to death than him if they stay here. Bigwig is tired of Fiver's complaining about this paradise and storms off back toward the warren. He walks behind a bush, and they hear a sudden scream. Now, I will warn you, the images in this part are pretty intense. Fiver and Hazel round the corner to find that Bigwig is caught on a snare and choking to death. Hazel doesn't know what to do and asks Bigwig if they taught him how to deal with this in the Oslaw. He struggles to mutter out the words, dig peg, but Hazel doesn't understand what he means. He sends Fiver to get the other rabbits who come rushing over. They're not much help, and everyone is panicking as Bigwig slowly dies. They figure Cowslip may know what to do, but apparently he wouldn't come, and more so, told Fiver to be quiet and stop talking about it. Finally, Blackberry spots the peg that the wire is on, and along with Silver starts digging it out. Meanwhile, Bigwig has stopped breathing. After digging the peg some of the way out, they send in Pipkin to chew through the tapered end. Finally, the peg snaps, but unfortunately, Bigwig isn't moving. It's a pretty sad and disturbing image, his body laying lifeless in the grass, his neck bleeding and flies buzzing around. Tears well up in Hazel's eyes as he says, "My heart has joined the 1,000, for my friend stopped running today." A powerful phrase that always gets me. Hazel then asks Pipkin about what happened with Cowslip, and he says that when Fiver called for help, all the rabbits in the warren just ignored him. They clearly didn't care if Bigwig died. Fiver kept pleading until the rabbits finally started striking him. As he tells them this, a raspy, venomous voice tears out, "I'll kill him." They turn around and see something shocking. Bigwig on his feet. He looks like hell, but he's alive. With the fly still buzzing around his head, he declares he'll kill Cowslip. Silver is on board, suggesting they kill all the rabbits and take their warren from them. At this, Fiver's eyes burn red and he shouts at them, saying that the warren is a death hole. The mist has finally cleared in Fiver's mind and he pieces together what's going on here, keeping it safe from Allele and giving plenty of food to the rabbits, only to fatten them up. He's placed snares everywhere, and sometimes the rabbits will disappear. That's why there's always room in the warren. Cowslip and the others have accepted this as the cost for paradise, a horrible bargain. They were so welcoming because if one of Hazel's crew dies, then one of them would live that much longer. They forgot about El Herrera's tricks and cunning, because who wants to hear about brave deeds when they're ashamed of their own? Understanding the terrible cost of living here, the rabbits decide to follow Fiver wherever he leads, and they make way for the hills. Soon they spot a rabbit trailing behind them. It's Strawberry, who wishes to come along. He can no longer handle the horrible deeds they took part in, and so they let him come along. Part 2. On Watership Down. Starting with Chapter 12, Watership Down. After long travels, the rabbits decide to rest in a rundown old barn. However, they wake up to a scary sight. Rats have surrounded them. Bigwig, Buckthorn, and Silver hold them off while the others escape. They all make it out okay, but Buckthorn was bitten pretty badly, and the smell of the blood will attract predators. They move quickly, and Fiver says they must cross the field with the iron trees. We find that he's referring to a series of large telephone towers, and they take refuge under one at the base of the hills. Fiver insists that they make it over the hill and will finally find what they're looking for. Hazel takes Dandelion and Hawkbit with her to climb the hills and see what lies on the other side. As they reach the top, they look out to see what feels like the entire world before them. This is Watership Down. Chapter 13, Fear in the Dark. Now that they've found their home, it's time to build a warren, and Hazel asks Blackberry for any ideas. He does have one, in fact. Near the edge of the hills is a cluster of trees. Blackberry thinks they should build a burrow under a large beech hanger inspired by some of the architecture of Cowslip's warren. Strawberry confirms that the nearby tree roots helped keep the ceiling stable, which is how they could have such a large burrow. Thankful that they brought Strawberry along, they get to work digging. After making some great progress, the crew takes a rest and the sun sets above them. In the night, they startle to a terrible shrieking sound. They speculate on what this noise could be, but Bigwig is convinced that he knows what it is. The voice cries out in agony that they're all dead. For the first time, Bigwig looks scared and believes it's the Black Rabbit of Inlay who has come to take him. Almost as if to confirm this, the voice screams out, "Thalie, Thalie." This is another rabbit phrase meaning furhead, which is Bigwig's nickname. He thinks he ought to have died on the wire and that now he must go and answer the call of the Black Rabbit. Instead, Hazel runs out to confront the entity. He finds a battered and mangled rabbit near death under a bush. It's Captain Holly from their original warren, along with one of the Oslaw, Bluebell. Before they can ask what happened, they think it best to head back to their holes first before they attract any enemies. Bigwig quietly tells Hazel that Bluebell should survive, but Holly may stop running this night. Chapter 14, A Mouse. Just as the title suggests, we see a mouse running about in Watership Down. Under the tree, the rabbits discuss the situation and how Holly barely survived. They then spot a flying kestrel circling the mouse in the meadows, and Hazel gets a wild idea, shooting off toward it. He tells the mouse to follow him, and the two run as fast fast as they can as the bird comes swooping down behind them. They just manage to get into a hole under the tree before the kestrel can snatch them up. Hazel tells the mouse he's safe now, and Bigwig is like, what the hell is this all about? Before Hazel can tell him why he did it, Dandelion says that Captain Holly is awake. They plan on all gathering in the new warren, and the mouse actually speaks to Hazel, saying, you help a mouse one time, a mouse help a you. Bigwig then comically says, what kind of rabbits are we, living in a tree alongside mice? Chapter 15. For Hazel-Rah to cry. Inside the partially constructed burrow, Captain Holly says that he is no longer the rabbit that stopped them from leaving, and it's clear that they are not the same rabbits that left. After Hazel and crew departed, Holly and his Oslaw tracked them down, but decided it wasn't worth it to chase them across the creek. Little did they know this was the least of their concerns. One day the rain was heavy and everyone was holed up in the burrows when a group of men came by prodding the holes and talking. The next morning, Holly went out looking for wild carrots when he saw a large hrudedu in the lane. Of course, we know this as an excavator. Soon the men showed up and started filling the holes, trapping the rabbits underground. Then they put large tubes into the remaining holes that turned the air bad. Even outside, the smell of it made Holly sick and dizzy. And at the same time, one of the young rabbits, Scabious, was brutally shot. We then hear the rest of the story from Bluebell, who was still inside the burrow at the time. At this point, the poison was spreading, but of course there was nowhere for the rabbits to escape. They crammed up the runs, clawing and kicking each other in bloody chaos. Soon the rabbits were dying, further blocking up the runs with their corpses, leaving the rest to suffocate. It's a pretty horrifying few panels. Luckily, Bluebell remembered an old slack run that went down instead of out, and used it to travel downward, where he ran into another cut-up rabbit, Pimpernel, who helped to guide him out. They found Holly outside, and the three looked in horror as the great claw destroyed their home and any living rabbits left. From there, they followed in Hazel's footsteps and eventually encountered Cowslip and his warren. At the mention of Hazel's name, Cowslip was enraged, and the whole warren began attacking them. Bluebell and Holly made it out, but the weak Pimpernel was left to be torn to pieces. As they travel, we learn that Bluebell is an encouraging companion, keeping things lively with jokes. The only annoying thing is we only see the setups and never get the punchlines. But I digress. From there, they made it to the Great Hill when Holly, on the brink of death, began crying out, and that brings them to the present. Hazel helps lick Holly's bloody ear clean, but informs him that it will forever be quite ragged and drooping. Holly can't complain and counts himself lucky. Chapter 16. Kahar. The next day, Blackberry and Bigwig find an injured bird in the meadow. It freaks out on them and they run back to tell Hazel. Much like with the mouse, he gets an idea. What if they helped it? So they bring the bird some bugs. You can already tell this bird has a big personality and speaks in broken English, or rabbit language, I guess. He tells them to piss off at first, but eventually follows Hazel and the others back to the warren where they take him under a tree. His name is Kahar, and they learn a lot of interesting things from him. One thing he said is quite unbelievable, that there's a point where the earth stops, and that there is nothing but water after. He refers to this as the Big Water, and says that one day he needs to return. He also informs them that there is a farm nearby where he was attacked by a cat, which is what hurt his wing. It's nice to know they have a friend in the skies now, but they have a big problem that could be the end of the warren. They don't have any does, aka females, and so they can't produce. This moment took me by surprise the first time I read this, because I didn't realize that their whole group is made up of dudes until now. Well, Hazel hopes that their new friend Kahar can help them find another warren and maybe some does. Chapter 17. Far Afield. So Kahar is sent out for a few days scouting the area, hoping to find some more rabbits. One day he does notice something. The nearby farm has some rabbit hutches with females. This was the only news he had, but on his way back past the river and the railroad tracks, he discovered another rabbit warren with tons of rabbits. They discuss the matter, and Hazel decides they should speak with the chief of this warren. If they're overpopulated, perhaps they could take some of the rabbits to Watership down. Knowing that the leader would have no respect for a chief that runs their own errands, Fiver suggests that Hazel stay back. It's decided that Holly, Silver, Buckthorn, and Strawberry will go instead. Chapter 18. Nuthanger Farm. While waiting for Holly and the others to return, Hazel hatches another plan. He and Pipkin will head to the farm with the rabbits and let them out of their hutches. Imagine the surprise Holly will have when he returns to find they've already got does waiting for them. Once they get to the farm, they see a big black dog, but Hazel assures Pipkin there's nothing to be afraid of. The dog is sleeping, and on top of that is tied to a rope. They enter a shed and approach the caged rabbits, two of which introduce themselves as Boxwood and Clover. Hazel tells them he comes from the hills, fields where he and his friends do as they please, without men, and how they eat grass and lie in the sun all day. He asks the rabbits to join him in his life of excitement and freedom. He tells them that if they wish to come with him, he'll be back later to open their hutches. As they leave the farm, Pipkin and Hazel spot the farm cat, and Hazel gets pretty ballsy, antagonizing it. The cat pounces at them, but the two rabbits are faster and escape. All the while, the dog wakes up barking, and it's pretty scary looking. Hazel tries to keep quiet about what they did, but Fiver is immediately suspicious. Realizing there's no way to hide the truth from his brother, he tells them about the hutch rabbits and his plan. Bigwig loves the idea and asks to help, but Fiver is totally against it, saying it's a silly risk. This causes Hazel to wonder if he's had some kind of vision, but in this instance, it has nothing to do with seeing the future. Fiver just doesn't like the idea. That night, Hazel, Blackberry, Bigwig, and Dandelion head to the farm in the cloak of darkness. However, Hazel promised Fiver he would wait at the edge of the farm while the others went in to break out the does. The rabbits agree to be let out, and Blackberry starts trying to come up with an idea to get the hutch open, when behind them, a cat sneaks up. But Bigwig and Dandelion are pretty badass. They kick and scratch the shit out of the poor cat, who runs away. Blackberry bites through the latches and tells the rabbits to push from the inside. Sure enough, the door falls to the ground with a clatter, freeing them. Unfortunately, the ruckus also wakes up the dog, who starts barking his head off. Bigwig then leads the rabbits out of the shed and past the terrifying barking dog. We can also see the cat hiding in the shadows. Two of the rabbits are scared stiff of the dog and get left behind. Hazel learns this, and he and Dandelion head back to try and get them, while Bigwig and the others head home. Just when they reach the scared rabbits, a flashlight shines on them, and all four rabbits are wide-eyed, transfixed, and frozen. It turns out to be the headlights on the farmer's truck. Hazel tells them to close their eyes and run, but one of the hutch rabbits is left behind, whom the farmer picks up. The man soon finds the others under the porch and once again shines a light on them. Hazel tells them to run for it while he draws the farmer's attention. He bolts out between the man's legs, but the farmer has other plans. He pulls out his shotgun and fires at Hazel. The piercing sound can be heard by Bigwig and the others who are still crossing the meadow. Though we don't see it, it's clear that Hazel has been shot, as the farmer declares that he got him. Clouds roll over, and we see the shadow of the black rabbit amongst the clouds. As the sun comes out early in the morning, Bluebell spots some rabbits returning to the warren. However, it's not Bigwig, it's Captain Holly and the others, and they're badly injured. They also have no new rabbits with them. Bluebell asks what happened, and Holly replies with a name: Woundwort. Chapter 19, Fiver Beyond. Later, Bigwig and the others return as well, and Dandelion reluctantly informs Pipkin and the others that Hazel is dead. Dandelion managed to get the other hutch rabbit back and then returned to see what happened to Hazel. He saw the men walking in the ditch and rabbit blood in the grass. It looks like they killed him. Bigwig says that Hazel was the bravest rabbit he knew, and what a dismal welcome this is for the new rabbits. He wonders where Fiver is, and Pipkin says that the little rabbit saw this coming and went underground to be alone. Down below, Fiver cries at the loss of his older brother, but then has a strange vision. He sees the farmer with blood-red eyes fire his gun and the buckshot hitting Hazel in the leg. Hazel, covered in blood, drags himself into a drain pipe, and the farmer can't find the body. Fiver looks into the drain, which is pouring blood, and then the farmer grabs him by the head and begins to drown him in his brother's blood. He emerges in a sea of red and finds Hazel bleeding out on a small plank of wood. In one last image, we see the real Hazel alive, but bleeding in the drain pipe. Fiver shoots up and declares that Hazel is alive. Chapter 20. You can't imagine it unless you've been there. Up top, everyone else has gathered to hear the news from Holly about what happened to them. With the aid of Kahar, the rabbits were on course for the large warren. When they got close, they were approached by 3 large rabbits. These rabbits ordered Holly and the others to follow them, but made no attempts to speak, instead just barking demands like they were being arrested. Eventually, they were taken to an overcrowded burrow. It was here that they learned more about this place, which is called Efrafa. A female rabbit named Hazel-Rah told them about the warren's overcrowding and how they begged the chief Woundwort to let them establish another warren, but he won't allow anyone to leave. Soon, Holly was summoned to a council meeting in a big burrow. When they entered, they heard the mad cry of a tortured rabbit. His name was Blackavar, and they ripped his ears to shreds for trying to escape. The poor rabbit is completely torn up. Finally, they meet with Woundwort, a huge and scary rabbit. They try to explain that they are there as an embassy looking for help and goodwill. But Woundwort wants nothing of it and instead assigns them to a captain to be marked. Suddenly, they find themselves like prisoners in Efrafa. With sentries everywhere, there was no chance of escape. To pass the time, the rabbits told stories. One story, which was referenced by Dandelion earlier, is the King's Lettuce, in which Hazel-Rah dresses up in a disguise to enter King Darzan's palace. The story gives Holly an idea. He tells the captain of his mark that Woundwort wants a word with him, and fearing the consequences of disobeying, the captain believes him. This gives Holly, Buckthorn, and Silver a chance to escape Efrafa, but 2 sentries stop them on the way out, and they get caught up in a brutal fight. Holly and the others manage to break past them, but not without getting their asses kicked a bit first. They ran until they came upon the railroad tracks, or as they call it, the Iron Road. With the sentries close behind, they ran over the tracks. It's here that Holly believes Hazel-Rah sent one of his great messengers to protect them. It was full of fire and smoke and light, and it shook the very ground beneath it. Of course, this is the train, and its lights froze the Efrafans on the track before running them down. After all of that, and returning home to find Hazel is dead, Holly says this is a nightmare. Chapter 21, Return and Departure. Blackberry finally returns and tells Bigwig that Hazel is alive. Fiver, guided by his vision, finds the drain pipe that Hazel crawled into, and there was his brother laying in a pool of blood. Fiver and Blackberry help to clean Hazel's wound, but with such a severe injury, there was no way he was going to make it up the hill. So Blackberry came to get help. The bird, Kahar, asks if they remove the black pebbles from Hazel and insists he come with them. So Bigwig, Blackberry, and Kahar return to Hazel and Fiver. The black pebbles that Kahar spoke of are actually the buckshot left in the rabbit's leg, and the bird's thin beak has no problem pulling them out. He advises that they wait a couple of days, and then Hazel should be able to climb the hill back to Watership Down. Hazel thanks Fiver for saving his life, and the 2 wait for a couple of days at the bottom of the hill. Holly comes to check in and is worried the warren won't survive winter without more does. Hazel believes they should try again to help the does of Efrafa escape, but Holly thinks they will be killed if they try. Hazel is finally healed up enough to climb the hills back to the warren, where they discuss the situation. As usual, Blackberry has come up with a plan to get the does out. Holly once again speaks out against the idea, but surprisingly, Fiver says that there's nothing wrong with the plan as of right now. It doesn't really matter either way though. This is their only option if their warren is to survive. That leads us to part 3. Efrafa. Chapter 22, The Black Rabbit of Inlay. The entire warren moves out. Hazel says that they will get as close to Efrafa as safely possible, and then he will relay the full plan to everyone. They stop to rest and request a story from Dandelion. Bigwig dismisses their suggestions and solemnly requests the only story he wants to hear right now, that of Hazel-Rah and the Black Rabbit of Inlay. So Dandelion tells another story, and this one is pretty dark. Hazel-Rah and his rabbits were trapped in their burrow, while the Beaver King Darzan waited outside. If any tried to come up and eat, the beavers would attack. This put them between a rock and a hard place, as they would either be gutted or starved. So Hazel-Rah called out to the Lord Frith, saying he would do anything to save his people. He would even strike a deal with the Black Rabbit of Inlay. So after a diversion, the prince ran out of the burrow and sought out the Black Rabbit, eventually coming upon a cold, dark place with no grass. Basically the rabbit equivalent of hell. Finally, he found the mouth of a tunnel like a huge rabbit hole. As he enters, we can see the shadow of the Black Rabbit coming up behind him. In the tunnel, Hazel-Rah finally confronted the shadow and begged the Rabbit of Inlay to save his people. The Black Rabbit said there are no bargains to be made here. In desperation, the prince then offered a bet to play a game of bobstones. If he wins, he'll give up his life for the safety of his people. The Black Rabbit accepted this wager, but says if he wins, he'll take Hazel-Rah's tail and whiskers. Of course, the prince had no chance of winning, and so the Black Rabbit's shadowy Oslaw took him and cut off his tail and pulled out his whiskers. He had every reason to leave after this, but instead approached the Black Rabbit again, and this time wagered himself a better storyteller. If he could tell a better story, then the Black Rabbit would help him, and if not, he would owe the shadow his ears. Of course, the Black Rabbit of Inlay told a tale of fear and darkness that would freeze the heart of anyone who heard it. Hazel-Rah was frozen in fear and couldn't even tell his story. So the Black Rabbit's Oslaw ripped his ears off. At this point, the prince knew he could never win against the Dark Rabbit. Mustering the last of his courage, he fastened leaves on his head in place of his maimed ears, and once again ventured into the cave looking for the Black Rabbit of Inlay. He was stopped by 2 shadowy Oslaw, who told him to turn back or he will be cursed with diseases and white blindness. Hazel-Rah ignored their warnings and plunged into a deep dark hole where he waited until he was infected. Finally, he left the cave. The poor rabbit was looking scrawny and tattered, missing his ears, tail, and whiskers, and covered in disease. His plan was to save his people by infecting the king and his men. The black rabbit of Inlay then approached him as he wondered, and told the poor fool that he would never make it back. This was true, as El-Rah collapsed on the brink of death. It seems this act of bravery and sacrifice touched even the heart of the black rabbit, and he gave the prince strength to leave, as well as offering to save his people. In fact, he said there was no time in this place, and that El-Rah's people were already saved. In that moment, the shadowy Osla appeared before King Darzan's soldiers, scaring them away. Barely clinging to life, the prince left the hellish place and began his journey home. Upon leaving, he was met by Frith, who said that such bravery should be rewarded. The sun god then gave El-Rah a new tail and whiskers, as well as a new set of shining ears that he put some starlight into. As Dandelion closes out the story, Pipkin comes running back, shouting that there is a humba nearby. Rabbit speak for fox. Chapter 23, The Great River. The gang all hide out under some hedges, watching the menacing fox prowl the meadow. Worried that it will eventually find them, the brave Bigwig runs out as a distraction to draw it off. He leads it into the woods. However, as he enters, he's stopped in his tracks by two Efrafa rabbits. Of course, there's a fox right on his tail, so he plows through them and keeps running. The Efrafa rabbits command him to stop, not realizing the fox is right behind them. Back under the hedge, the others only hear the loud squeal of a rabbit and assume that Bigwig got yanked by the beast. To their surprise, Bigwig shows up. They continue on their journey, guided by Kahar, who keeps an eye out for patrols and leads them to a river. This is the best place for them to wait, as even the Efrafa rabbits don't go near it for fear of what lies in the water. Fiver tells them that there is no danger here, it's only unfamiliar. Nearby, Blackberry finds a mysterious object in the water. It's a small boat tied to a post on the bank. Kahar explains that humans use it to move fast down the river, and Bluebell, that goofball, jumps in it and dances around, calling himself a water rabbit. This gives Blackberry an idea. He remembers the wooden plank that they used in the creek all that time ago, and realizes that this would be the perfect finale to their plan. If they manage to get the does out, they can use the boat to escape downriver, far away from Woundwort. It's here that Bigwig departs and heads off towards Efrafa alone, an important part of their plan. Chapter 24, The Hlessi. Bigwig runs through the Efrafa territory until a patrol spots him and tackles him to the ground, scratching and biting him. He pushes them off and they ask where he comes from, but Bigwig lies and says his warren was destroyed by men. Well, I guess that's kinda true. He says he wishes to join the Efrafa, and so they take him back to the warren to speak to the chief. Woundwort starts asking Bigwig questions and calls him a Hlessi. This is a rabbit term for wandering rabbit that has no home. He wonders why Bigwig wishes to join Efrafa, and Bigwig boosts his ego, saying of course he'd want to join the Efrafa under Woundwort's great leadership. Bigwig tells him he can fight and run and that he was an Oslaw in his own warren. Elsewhere, we see some of the Efrafa rabbits being let out to eat in the field. We get the sense that Hazel-Rah is something of a troublemaker and that they keep an eye on her. A captain named Chervil and his Oslaw discuss this, along with the fact that they recently lost two captains, one to a train and another to a humba. Soon, Bigwig shows up and is assigned to Captain Chervil's mark. They tell him to present his hindquarters so they can mark him, and once he's done bleeding, they'll start his training. You may have guessed by now that this is all part of the plan, a long con where Bigwig gains their trust. It also makes sense why Bigwig requested the story of El-Rah and the Black Rabbit. He must feel like he too is going into a den of darkness to help save his warren. Chapter 25, A Stroke of Luck. Later, Bigwig runs into Blackavar, the poor rabbit that was tortured for trying to escape, and he doesn't look much better now. He's used as an example and is brought up for all the others to see while they eat so that they know what happens to those who try and leave. Jeez. Chervil says he deserves it and tells Bigwig he can turn in for the day. Bigwig crams in with the others in a crowded burrow when one of the Oslaw, named Marjoram, is like, "What the hell are you doing, man? Officers get their own burrows." As Marjoram leads Bigwig to his own spot, they pass by Hazel-Rah, who Marjoram refers to as a troublemaker. Once Bigwig is left by himself, he wakes up a sleeping rabbit and demands that he bring Hazel-Rah to him. When she shows up, Bigwig doesn't hesitate to tell her what's going on, that he's a friend of Holly's and that he needs her help rope to break them out of here. He says he can do this with the help of a bird, which might sound crazy. Hazel-Rah closes her eyes and then surprisingly says that she can see his bird and other things too, like a dog, a rope that snaps, and a rabbit that rides a harududu. She often sees things that come to pass and assumes that Bigwig will think she's insane. But Bigwig knows a little rabbit with the same gifts that he trusts, so he trusts her too. He tells her to gather as many does as she can at tomorrow's Silflay. Bigwig will meet with Kahar and have him attack the sentries so that they have a chance to escape. Bigwig also plans on bringing Blackavar with them, feeling bad for the rabbit. They'll all head to the river and hopefully escape Woundwort on the boat. Chapter 26, Approaching Thunder. The next day, Bigwig meets the bird in the field, telling him to come back at sunset, and when Bigwig gives the signal, he should attack. Churville notices him hanging out pretty close to the bird and finds the whole thing suspicious. After this, Bigwig tracks down Blackavar, who's being guarded while he passes Shraka, which is literally their word for shit. He whispers to him that he's a secret enemy of Efrafa and that they are escaping tonight. He'll tell Blackavar when the time comes to run. Blackavar's guard finds it odd that Bigwig wanted to speak with him and discusses it with another Oslaw. After hearing Bigwig's description, the Oslaw recognizes him as the rabbit that led a fox to them in the woods. It looks like this is one of the survivors. This isn't good. Now we have two sources of suspicion on Bigwig. Chapter 27, The Thunder Builds Up. Soon, Woundwort himself asks to have a word with Bigwig and questions why he didn't mention the incident with the Humba before. Bigwig says it was a stroke of bad luck. He didn't mean for it to happen and that he didn't think much of it at the time. Next, Woundwort asks about the mysterious bird and why Bigwig was so close to it. Bigwig says that honestly, he was trying to impress Captain Churville by showing he wasn't afraid. You gotta hand it to Bigwig. His lies are all reasonable and even Woundwort seems to buy it. But with the suspicion high, the time has finally come. Tonight, the rabbits try to escape or die trying. Chapter 28, The Thunder Breaks. Hazel and the other rabbits wait patiently by the boat when Kahar shows up and tells them the escape will happen tonight. So the rabbits head to the railway arches. This is the halfway point where they'll meet with Bigwig, although Hazel must stay behind on account of his bad leg. Unfortunately, back at Efrafa, Hazel-Rah is in a panic and tells Bigwig that one of the does was arrested and taken to the council. She believes this doe will tell them everything. Unable to wait for Kahar, Bigwig has to think on his feet. He tells Captain Churville that Woundwort wishes to speak with him immediately. After Churville leaves, Bigwig then tells Marjoram that Churville suggested an early Silflay on account of the storm growing outside. He orders him to bring Blackavar up here as well. In the meantime, Bigwig attacks the other Oslaw on duty and a bloody fight ensues. Bigwig cries out to Blackavar, but Marjoram hears this and starts trying to kill Blackavar. We cut back and forth between the fights as the rabbits slice each other up in a gory display. Just as Marjoram goes in for the killing blow, the does round the corner and tell him to stop. Outside, Bigwig finally wins out against the Oslaw and is soon met by Blackavar and the other rabbits. There's some heavy implication here that Hazel-Rah and the other does killed Marjoram, and they all run off into the storm. Soon, one of the captains comes running up along them and demands they give up and turn around, and tells them that a patrol is already on its way. But Bigwig knows this is just to stall them and presses forward. Then, in a frightening moment, the lightning crackles and the rabbits stop in their tracks. Woundwort himself and his men have cut them off. Blackavar realizes it's over. He tells Bigwig that he did his best, and at the very least they can put up a good fight before they meet the Black Rabbit of Inlay. Woundwort tells his men to take the does back, and if they refuse, to kill them. Just before the massacre begins, however, Kahar, that flying son of a bitch, comes screeching in, the storm lighting him up from behind. This scares the shit out of all the Efrafa and gives Bigwig and the does a chance to run. They find Silver and Blackberry waiting for them at the arches, who help escort the does toward the river. Finally, they get to the bank and find Hazel waiting for them and urging them into the boat. He's gnawed at the rope that's holding it ashore and it's close to snapping. For a moment, the new rabbits protest, not knowing what a boat is or if it's safe, but soon Woundwort shows up behind them, and this gives them some encouragement. All the rabbits flood into the boat. Woundwort believes he has them trapped and is prepared to slaughter them, but just then, the rope snaps, and Woundwort and the Oslaw are shocked to see Hazel and the rest of the crew, as well as the does, rapidly float away down the river. Despite some major hiccups, Blackberry's plan has succeeded, thanks to the courage of Bigwig. Part 4, Hazel-Rah. Chapter 29, The Way Back. Shivering cold and exhausted, the bunch of rabbits sit in the boat, helpless until it stops. Eventually they come upon a low bridge and shout for everyone to get down, but a doe takes a heavy blow and is badly injured. Finally, the boat stops at the edge of another bridge and the bank, and miraculously the rabbits all make it onto the shore. Here they find a dry spot under a fallen tree and rest, but the poor rabbit that was injured on the boat stopped running that night. Kahar, feeling like he's repaid his debt, says farewell as he must head back to the big water, promising to return one day. After a long and tiresome journey, the rabbits have finally made it back home. Everything seems well and good, and there's finally peace in the burrow. However, on the edge of the meadow, it seems two of Woundwart's captains have managed to find the warren and make plans from afar. Chapter 30. The news at sunset. It's now moving into autumn, and the rabbits of Watership Down are happy to see the very first litter of the warren is born. Yep, Hazel-Rah has had kittens. Hazel feels like a fraud as a chief and says he believes his leg will never fully heal from the buckshot. Suddenly, Holly and Blackavar come running back from on patrol and shout for everyone to get underground and fill the holes. They say a small army of Oslaws is on their way from Efrafa. It looks like this fight isn't over. With no other options, they start filling in the holes to the burrow, and Hazel goes off alone to speak to Woundwort, hoping to talk some sense into him. In the woods nearby, Woundwort is going over an attack plan with his men. Marjoram is distracted, looking up at the sky, worried that Bigwig's bird may return. This sets Woundwort off. He says that Bigwig does not command the birds. He didn't call down lightning, and he didn't vanish in the river. It seems that legends have grown in Efrafa of Bigwig, all based on truth, but exaggerated to the point that the Efrafa fear him. Hazel then comes out into the clearing and speaks to Woundwort. He proposes the idea that they establish a warren in between Watership Down and Efrafa that would benefit them both. But the hard-headed Woundwort has his own proposal. Bring him Blackavar and his does back, or he'll rip out the throat of every rabbit in the warren. Chapter 31, A Message from Hazel-Rah. That night, having no word back from Hazel, Woundwort and his men head in to survey the warren. They finally come upon a hole that hasn't been blocked up, and Woundwort sends an Osla in to check it out. Inside, Blackavar and Holly are waiting and get the jump on him, scratching him all to shit and ripping his ear. The rabbit runs out of the hole in a panic to the disappointed Woundwort. Another Osla mentions the white bird, and Woundwort tells him not to talk about the damn bird again. One of the captains suggests starving them out, but Woundwort is too impatient for that. He commands them all to start digging. Down below, the rabbits begin hearing Woundwort and his men scratching above. Bigwig suggests they all move into the sleeping burrows and that he'll block the entrance once they're inside. As the rabbits above get further and further into the dirt, Hazel tracks down Fiver, who is unconscious and having some kind of fit. He has a vision of the past, Bigwig mentioning a large dog on the loose in the woods, and then the words that Hazel-Rah spoke, a dog and a rope that snaps. In his vision, we see the dog from the farm, only Fiver himself emulates its snarling and barking, almost like he's possessed by the dog for a moment. Bigwig shows up wondering what that monstrous sound was, and Hazel tells him it was a message from Hazel-Rah. He knows what to do to save the warren. Hazel, Dandelion, and Blackberry must leave at once. He tells Bigwig to hold off the rabbits as long as possible when they break through the dirt, and then he speeds off. Up top, the digging rabbits have freaked out from the terrifying noise they heard from Fiver, believing that there is an animal besides a rabbit down there. Another Ocelot chimes in, reminding Woundwort of the river creature that they rode away on, and suggests that they can command animals. Another captain comes up saying they saw a few rabbits escape from the burrow, including the lame rabbit who offered terms, and Woundwort says not to worry about them. That'll be 3 less rabbits for them to fight. Chapter 32, Nuthanger Farm again. Halfway to the farm, Hazel leaves Blackberry hiding out. This is part of the plan that will come into play later. They get to the farm and Hazel moves in toward the sleeping black dog, telling Dandelion to make sure the dog chases him and doesn't get distracted. Hazel makes his way atop the doghouse and starts gnawing on the rope. Unfortunately, the scratching noise wakes up the dog, who sees Dandelion and starts barking like crazy. At the same time, the farm cat is sneaking up behind Dandelion. It's an extremely tense sequence as Hazel tells Dandelion to run, and at that moment, just before the cat jumps, the dog lunges forward, knocking over his doghouse and snapping the rope. This causes Hazel to fall to the ground with a tremendous crash. The dog runs off after Dandelion, and Hazel seems to be okay. That is until the cat pounces on him and pins him to the ground. The cat smiles and says, "Can you run?" I think not, as its claws sink into the poor rabbit. It looks like Hazel may have finally met his end. Chapter 33. Bigwig stands his ground. Back in the warren, the rabbits are shaking with fear as the digging and scratching grows louder, and Woundwort is only moments away from breaking through the roof. Bigwig comes up with a plan. He'll have Holly and some others bury him under the loose soil at the entrance to the sleeping burrows. He may be able to get the jump on Woundwort, and this will be their last defense. But before they bury him, Pipkin pleads to stay as Fiver is still collapsed and not moving. He seems to be dead. And Bigwig says that there's nothing they can do, urging Pipkin to go with the others. Up top, the diggers inform Woundwort that the dirt is ready to give way, and in a terrifying display of his prowess, the huge rabbit jumps in through the ceiling, followed by his men. They immediately spot Fiver, and Woundwort doesn't take much notice, saying a small rabbit like that doesn't matter anyway. Nearby, they hear a rustling noise as the rabbits try and draw Woundwort's attention toward Bigwig. Of course, the Ocelot believe this to be the beast they heard from before. Once again, Woundwort tells his men to begin digging through the burrow to find the does. Just outside the farm, Dandelion is running like hell from the black dog, trying his best to keep it on his tail. Back at the warren, the run is finally dug out, and Woundwort leads the way to hopefully slaughter the rabbits at the end. Of course, he has no idea that Bigwig is hiding right beneath him. He jumps out and bites Woundwort on the arm, drawing blood. The two rabbits exchange claws and leave each other a little bloody. It looks like we're about to get one of the most epic anime battles of all time. Outside, Dandelion has finally caught up to the place where Blackberry was left, so Blackberry runs out, catching the dog's attention and leading it back to the warren. Meanwhile, the violent and bloody fight continues between Woundwort and Bigwig. They dig in their claws and bite each other's flesh, with Woundwort even taking a huge chunk out of Bigwig's ear. Holly pleads for Bigwig to let him swap with him, but Bigwig's a bigger rabbit, and he must block the run even if he's dead. Woundwort offers Bigwig a deal, saying there's no reason to give his life away. If Bigwig joins him, he'll allow him back into the Ocelot, and he can command any mark he wants. Bigwig tells him to Silflay Hraka, and that it's Inlay, not Efrafa, he'll be going to. Woundwort then charges him, headbutting him in the chest, but Bigwig is determined and holds him off as best he can. They both stop for a moment, out of breath, and it's clear Woundwort has never faced a rabbit like this. He gives Bigwig another chance to give up, but Bigwig says his chief told him to defend this run, so he'll be staying right here. The captains are confused by this. If Bigwig isn't their chief, then what bigger rabbit is still waiting for them? They're overtaken with fear and run away. With no one to back him up, Woundwort retreats outside, saying as soon as the chief shows up, he'll rip him to shreds. As he leaves, he runs into Fiver, who's now awake and standing, surrounded by the other Ocelot. Woundwort commands one of the captains to kill the little rabbit and heads up top. The captain moves toward Fiver, who begins to speak, saying, "I'm sorry for you with all my heart, but you can't blame us." Fiver looks at the rabbit intensely and says, "Believe me, I'm sorry for your death." Suddenly, the rabbit is frightened, and looking into Fiver's eyes, he sees his oncoming doom in the form of a large black dog. This is one of my favorite scenes from the comic. It's truly frightening the way the dog is drawn here. The captain screams in terror and runs away, and he's not the only one scared. Most of Woundwort's men are gripped with fear. Who's the real chief of this warren, and what about the creature they have hidden in the burrows? They plead with their chief to head back to Efrafa. Before Woundwort can chew them out again, Dandelion comes running up, and something large is coming behind him. Woundwort commands his soldiers to stay put, but they all run away in terror. The next page is a horrifying panel of the dog snatching up one of Woundwort's men in his jaws, spraying blood through the air and whipping him around. Woundwort, that ballsy son of a bitch, yells out that dogs aren't even dangerous and actually tries to fight the dog head on. We don't know exactly what happens after this, as it jumps ahead to the evening. The rabbits emerge from the warren to find that Woundwort and his men are either dead or gone. It seems it's finally over. Chapter 34. And last. Here we are at the final chapter of Watership Down. After the attack, the Efrafa believed that Bigwig truly could control animals like the dog, the fox, and the white bird. On top of that, their leader was gone, so they never returned to Watership Down. If it wasn't for the actions of Bigwig and Hazel, the rabbits would likely be dead right now. Somehow, Bigwig survived the battle though, and it took days before he could even walk again. We find that this is all being told as a story to a litter of rabbits by none other than Dandelion, who's now looking rather old. He tells the young rabbits that Woundwort's body was never found. Some say that he hasn't stopped running to this day and is actually the first cousin to the black rabbit himself. Despite his evil doings, Woundwort was a strong rabbit that actually took on a dog with no fear. One of the little rabbits then asks if they can hear about Hazel riding in a hrududu, and another says that's made up. Dandelion then tells them what really happened. After Hazel was attacked by the farm cat, he was almost killed, but the farmer's daughter saw what was happening and got the cat away from him. The little girl picked Hazel up and asked her father if she could keep him. He says that a wild rabbit in captivity will only die. So he takes his daughter and Hazel out to the meadows in his car. We see Hazel sitting in the girl's lap looking out the window with wide eyes. After finding a good place out in the meadow, the little girl lets him go. Hazel really did ride in a hrududu and survived to tell them about it. This transitions to Hazel in the present, who's now very old and tired. As he sleeps, a light shines on him. El-Rah himself appears with his starlight ears. He tells Hazel he knows he's been feeling tired and that he's come to ask if he'll join his Osla. If he's ready, Hazel can join him now. They walk outside and look at the young litter. El-Rah assures him that he doesn't need to worry about them anymore. They'll be alright, along with thousands after them. The prince leads Hazel into the woods, and Hazel says he doesn't think he needs his body anymore. He collapses onto the ground, and his spirit, that of a much younger rabbit, leaps out. Together, Hazel and Herrera fly off into the sky. And that, my friends, is the end of Watership Down. Well, there you go, Watership Down. I hope you enjoyed this explanation video, and thank you for indulging me. Every once in a while, I just pick a piece of media because I like it, even if it's not strictly horror or even recommended by anyone. I would have liked to read the novel before I made this, that way I could have compared it to the comic to see how faithful it is, but unfortunately I ran out of time. To my understanding, it's a pretty faithful adaptation, but let me know what changes they made in the comments. Anyway, shout out to Kill Me Katie as always for the intro and outro music, which is likely playing right now, and if you want to see your art at the end of my videos, email me a submission to the address below with the name or social media handle. But I appreciate you guys watching at all. This is Grief speaking. Goodbye, friends.